Hey guys, Joseph Baba Ifa here on the channel connecting you to your destiny once again. Elekes, do I need them? New video today. And if you haven't had the opportunity, please go ahead and tap on that subscribe, like, comment, or share button. New material coming out today. Elekes, and be sure to turn on those notifications. Elekes, very popular topic when we're talking about Ifa and Orisha. Probably the most identifiable thing within our culture. You know, whether you're in Hialeah, whether you're in the Bronx, whether you're in a very active Orisha community, or possibly not, the first way you're really going to know whether somebody's in Orisha or not is usually because of some type of beadwork, right? Or these necklaces, or collares, as they're known. A great way of identifying each other, probably one of the most beautiful parts of our culture, the jewelry and the beadwork within Ifa and Orisha. Really skilled people, really beautiful things to look at, and it kind of creates this fraternity or this unity between us where it's like, oh, I know that person's a brother or a sister. I know that they're part of this tribe, and that's where this whole mentality comes from, which is Africa, right? Within Ifa and Orisha practice, very popular, but apart from that, usually one of the first steps you're going to go through within this spirituality. And for the longest time, it's been pretty staple that that's the first thing you're going to receive. This video is neither to sway anyone, it's just so everyone has as much information as they can before they start selecting spiritual houses and processes that you're going to be going through, and making sure you're really in line with what's being recommended, right? So what I want to start the video with is a pataki. And that pataki comes from the holy Odu Obeokanran, or Obekana. And in this sign, it speaks of a pataki where Orisha and Ileke were married in heaven, right? They were celestial marriage and couple, and they loved each other dearly. They were inseparable, and the time was coming for them to basically make it to the front of the line and go through their divination in heaven and be able to come down to earth and live out their destiny the way Olodumare and Orumila saw fit. So when they went for divination, this Odu of Obekana was revealed, where Ifa said only one of them could go down at a time. So Orisha looked at Ileke, who was his wife, and said, I love you so much, I want you to experience the happiness of life first, so that, you know, I don't want you here waiting to be happy anymore. I'll follow along. But Ileke looked at Orisha, and under the advice of Orumila, and told Orisha that he should be the first one to go down, because he was going to be able to create conditions so that Ileke, when Ileke came down from heaven, she would be comfortable, right? And Orisha protested, but began to realize that his wife and Orumila were wise, and he accepted. So Orisha came down from heaven to earth, right? And after that, Ileke soon followed. And where did Ileke land on? Orisha's neck. If we interpret Ifa, Ifa says that Orisha must be present before Ileke can be present. In this sign, Orisha arrived on earth, and a pact was fulfilled, and preparations and conditions were prepared so that Ileke could follow. So for those who understand our initiation process, for those who kind of know how the flow is, for you to be able to put on a necklace, you have to have the Orisha first. For example, not to delve, but you will have Orumila before you put on Orumila's necklace. You will have Orishas before you put on the Orisha's necklace. In the Odu Obekana, it says we must receive an Orisha before we can put on their necklace, right? And we're going to make these common points later on in the video. So that's the first point I want to make with Obekana, right? And ironically, the first necklace that ever came down was Orumila's, because in commemoration of the Babalawo in heaven that performed the divination for them, Orisha and Elekes, said, we will always commemorate you by making sure you're the first necklace that is provided to human beings on earth. And that's when we go from the Odu of Bekana to the Odu of Baba Ifa, where in this sign, it speaks of when the children of Orumila started coming down from heaven to earth, and life was great. But Iku, or death, was jealous of Orumila because Orumila had many followers. They loved him, they adored him, they worshipped him. You know, there was peace and happiness on earth. Unfortunately, people did have to die in transition, but Iku was supposed to be under the honor system of ethic to only take people when Olodumare or Orumila said. But Iku, wanting to defy Orumila, started killing people before their time. Right? He started consuming them and eating them before their time because he was very greedy. He was very advantageous. He wanted to make a statement, and apart from that, really embarrass Orula and take it out on his children. So Orumila, when he realized that his children were arriving in heaven before time, knew that death was up to no good. So he arrived on earth, and he couldn't just openly accuse death of what he was doing. He had to prove it, right? So Orumila and death met each other, and they conversed. And death, not being able to, refrain from being in constant competition with Orumila, challenged him. And he said, I hear that you want me to, follow your lead when it comes to who dies and who doesn't and etc. Who are you to tell me anything? Let's see how talented you really are. Let's see who can go longer without eating. And Orumila publicly couldn't deny the challenge, but Orumila was a man and death was an entity. So the challenge was going to be that they were going to lock themselves in each of their respective huts, and whoever came out first lost. So Orumila, the day before said competition, performed divination, where the Odu of Ejiobe was revealed. And it said that he had to perform sacrifice to Eshu with lots of different types of food. In some versions, it was an animal sacrifice. When he did this, Eshu said, no worries, I got you. This guy won't last 9 days, I assure you. And you're not going to lose. So Eshu started, the competition. He was going to be the witness. Each person went into their respective huts, and the competition began. But Eshu started siphoning food to Orula through the window. So days went by, and death was like, yeah, no worries. But yeah, by the 7th day, 8th day, death was losing it. He was famished. In some versions, it's a she. And it got to the point where death decided he was going to cheat and eat in the garbage. But guess where Eshu lives? Eshu lives in the garbage. And Eshu saw him and screamed at the top of his lungs, death lost. Heavens opened up. Olodumare was witness to the sanction. Orumila came out. Death looked at him and said, you really are who people think you are. You really are what people say you are. And Orula said, I appreciate the courtesy, but we have to find a way for you to stop killing my children before time. Well, death kind of made up an excuse and said, I didn't know they were your children, right? And Orumila said, well, how about this? Let's create something so it's undeniable whose children are mine or not. And as people started getting initiated into the Hand of Ifa and Isefa ceremony, Orumila started providing them with the Ileke, the necklace, and the Ide, or the bracelet. And Orumila told him, he said, you have to fulfill your function, you have a job to fulfill and do, but it has to be at the predestined moment. We can't interrupt the fabric of the universe because of, certain desires, or we feel like we have certain liberties. If you see somebody with this necklace on, right, you have to consult with me first to see if it's time for them to really go. And death accepted Orumila's terms. Until this day, it is this way. So this is why Orumila is known as not the manipulator of life and death, but he who knows how to interact perfectly with it. And more importantly, the gray area that we, the Babalawos and spiritual professionals, work with. Because unfortunately, if somebody is meant to transition, they're going to. If that is your predestined moment and that's how much time you have, that's it. But if it's not your time and we're able to spiritually readjust you and get you right back on path and on track so that you can continue living, that's what we work with. And that's what Orumila was able to gain that day by way of help of Eshu and being able to overcome death. What does this Pataki tell us? This Pataki says that human beings came down from earth, kind of like Obekana did, or Orishas, because our original ancestors were Orisha, right? And they were being taken before time. So after Orumila did said processes to be able to save us, his terms were, they have to put on my necklace. And this necklace is what's going to let you know whether you can take them or not. So if we look at the fabric of what this Pataki is saying, the necklace of Orumila is the first necklace that the human being is supposed to put on by way of receiving their hand of Ifa. And it's the necklace that actually activates the necklaces that are to come, right? So when we get into the Elekes ceremony, right? I want to talk a little bit about what happened in Cuba. In Cuba, unfortunately, we were oppressed. We were brought over. We were ripped from our families, our ancestors, their sacrifice. And we were a lost tribe. We were a lost nation. And when we arrived in Cuba and people started being able to actually fraternize and realize, hey, we're all from the same place, or we're sister tribes, or, we're around each other, other clans, they started reorganizing this faith. And that's kind of where the regla de ocha comes from, right? Where all these labalabas or elders started really getting together and started pooling their resources to see how they were going to reorganize this spirituality that had just suffered this transculturation process. So they came to the conclusion of who would be the best Orishas to identify with to be able to preserve the fabric of this spirituality. And that was the first 5, because they were the ones who had the biggest followings in Nigeria, right? So Elegua was one of them, Obadala, Shango, Yemoja, and Oshun. These are the 5 most popular Orishas in Nigeria, at least back then. And they had the largest tribes and followings. And they said when somebody's going to get initiated into Orisha, or at least put on these necklaces, it's going to be these first 5, because if we are able to preserve at least the mysteries of these 5 Orishas, we'll still have a religion, right? Because they were really going through a time where we're like, is Ifa going to die? So because of that, these were the first 5 necklaces that were given, and was a way of identifying said person as a part of that clan that was now beginning to sprout in Cuba and in the New World, right? And it was an innovation. It was an innovation for unity, preservation, and not an issue. Not an issue when it comes to that and recognizing what our ancestors put in place. Perfectly fine to a certain degree, but the issue is we're not living 400 or 500 years ago. Survival techniques and whatnot, Ifa and Orisha is here to stay. Ideally, these necklaces shouldn't be given before the person actually crowns an Orisha, because they have not received any of these deities. Out of desperation, our ancestors imposed this as a way of preservation and unifying. But as of now, is it necessary? Not necessarily. Because you have the opportunity to go through the proper process, which was always stipulated in Africa. The first thing everybody goes through in Nigeria is their hand of Ifa process, right? And by way of it, we're fulfilling what the Odu Eyobe says and Obekana says, because the first necklace is from the first Orisha that we receive, which is Orumila. Because even in the hand of Ifa process, Eshu is received, of course, the way we do it, but in Isheshe, they don't actually incorporate that all the time. If you're identified as a descendant of Eshu, or if you come with an Odu that is very frequent of Eshu, then they'll provide you an Eshu, but sometimes you don't even get that. The first deity that the person receives here on earth is Orumila, ideally, because that's the first necklace you need to protect you against premature, unpredestined death, which is what the Ileke does, and it's what activates the other necklaces afterwards, because you're unable to receive those other deities without Orumila, because we don't know how to consecrate them or do it in your specific predestined fashion before I have your sign of hand of Ifa, right? When we look at Africa, in recent times, you kind of see actually in West Africa the adoption of some of the color combinations that originated in Cuba, which obviously have ancestral ties right back to them, which maybe it wasn't as popular at one point. But there were times when there were certain deities that didn't necessarily have a necklace, right? Orumila has always had one. Obatala has always been characterized by, the white beads, Oshun by the yellow ones. Very common and very easy to identify where these concepts come from. But as such, in Africa, they do provide you with Ileke when you receive a deity, of course. But at the same time, there is no ceremony similar to the one that's found in the Lukumi tradition of the first 5, right? So the real question is understanding what it is you're doing, understanding the literature behind what steps you're about to take. To be frank with you, the majority of people who have received the Ileke ceremony, a lot of them actually come with symptoms of spiritual frustration, right? Because, a lot of people look and say, well, Joseph, how could anything negative come from this? And it's not so much negativity. It's not that anybody's being punished or whatnot. It's just spiritual frustration. So what I mean by that is, okay, you have these 5 necklaces on, right? You haven't received any of these deities. We're not living in that moment when it was necessary, and the Orishas were kind of organized in a way where that was, positive pertaining to that. But when we're talking about right now and someone receiving the necklaces, you have all these necklaces on. You haven't received any of these deities. So what happens? The Orisha is now focusing on you because the Ileke draws the attention of Orisha. Orisha is Ileke's husband or partner. So they're automatically drawn towards that, right? So when they're drawn towards that, they're focusing on you now. And, when they focus on you, they want to be able to recognize you. So they're not going to recognize you because you haven't received them. You haven't provided any sacrifice of animals. You haven't realized the process of Ita, right? Where that conversation happens. And the ironic thing is, who lets the Orishas know who you are is Orumila, because Orumila is the one who reminds the Orisha of your Odu or sign, and as well that you're a child of them. Your actual guardian Orisha doesn't know or hasn't created that link with you until Orumila identifies it at the moment of the hand of Ifa process. So it can be very counterproductive because you have these five very titanic Orishas focusing on you, and you haven't provided anything for them. So what they're looking at is, okay, you want to be down, you want to be involved, that's great, but I don't know who you are. So now I'm focusing on you, and now I'm getting frustrated with you because now that my eyes are on you and I'm attentive to you, now I'm expecting something. And that's where this process of Mediua Siento came from, because it was a way of kind of obligating people to continue those steps into Orisha, right? Let's put these necklaces on this person. Let's start drawing them in. Let the Orisha start focusing on them to kind of motivate them to do it quicker, right? That's not always positive. And, it possibly spiritually frustrated a bunch of people. Different concepts, different times. By no means are we critiquing it, but what we're trying to provide here on the channel is the best option for you guys, right? What is best for the human being who wants to be a part of Ifa and Orisha based on what Ifa and Orisha says? Ifa and Orisha says the best way to start is by way of your hand of Ifa, putting on your necklace of Orumila, and then at that point getting organized to initiate into the mysteries of your guardian Orisha, so that you can wear this necklace and be identified as somebody that is deserving of this this recognition, right? Because the Ileke is actually a status symbol. When you see somebody in Nigeria with an Ileke on, whether it's the green and brown one for the Babalawos, or let's say a yellow one for an Oshun priest, you're recognizing them as a priest. So we're putting priest responsibilities and obligations on people that have not taken those steps or spiritually prepared themselves for that kind of spiritual attention, right? So another thing is this: when you crown Orisha, automatically you have to be given that necklace because it's a recognition of the spiritual debt you just fulfilled. So it would be better to allocate those funds towards receiving something you wouldn't receive in the Orisha ceremony, which is Orumila, rather than paying for the same thing twice, right? So at the end of the day, we have no bias here. We simply want people to do what's best for them. And what's best for everybody is to receive their hand of Ifa as their first step going into this spirituality. And once you do that, if you're not meant to be a Babalawo, Orumila at that point becomes symbolic to you. You attend to him, you fulfill your obligations to your godfather of Ifa, whatever they may be. And then at that point, you lead a beautiful, harmonious, spiritually aligned life within this religion. And that way, things go positive. Because if we're being involved or getting involved in Ifa and Orisha, it's because we want things to go better or to stay the same. Well, always to go better, because things can always go better. So, and that's what, putting on Orumila's necklace first really provides, right? And it kind of lays the foundation and brickwork for all that is to come, which will be positive if we do it in this format, right? So guys, first and foremost, I want to thank my wife, Erica, for this wonderful idea. Babe, I love you. Great ideas as always. I got a couple more of your videos coming out. Joseph Baba Ifa loves all of the subscribers. We sincerely appreciate it, guys. We're getting close to 4,000. This is incredible. You guys visit, you come and stop by and say hello, and we sincerely appreciate that. Interacting with each and every one of you is such a pleasure. I say Orumila's greatest gift to me is surrounding me with wonderful people, and each and every one of you are that, right? Couple notes before we disconnect. If you're interested in a consultation with me, Joseph Baba Ifa, you're going to go ahead and contact 407-440-2086, where one of our employees and assistants is going to be able to get you scheduled up as soon as possible. You can also do this by way of visiting botanicacandlesandmore.com, where apart from scheduling a consultation with me, you're going to be able to find all the products you need to be able to do all of your spiritual routines to get the best results, right? Ifa and Orisha clothing is also present there. Please be sure to like, comment, share, definitely subscribe, turn on those notifications. Thank you so much for your patience. July was quite a month, coming out with material as much as we can. Great questions and support from you guys. Keep them coming. We're eventually going to get all this out there, I assure you. Everything's going wonderfully, guys. We appreciate the support for the Botanica as well as the brand. And from all of us here, thank you so much. And may Olodumare, may Orumila, may Orisha, may Egun, may everybody bless all of you, right? Boroi boy bochiche. Take care, familia.